Hi everyone. Thank you for joining us for our live webinar session on ensuring cyber security using IEC 62304. And thanks a lot for joining in a huge number and registering for this webinar. So I would like to tell you guys that we have two panelists. Earlier we had decided to go with three panelists because of some issues. We don't have Vinod today with us. So let me introduce to our lead panelist, who is Kuldeep Tyagi, for this event. Kuldeep has rich expertise in clinical and regulatory affairs. More than 18 years he has worked on these regulations and other clinical affairs. And the next panelist is Arnanshu Das, who is who have rich expertise in clinical affairs as well. He has done I think more than 50 years from last couple of years, and I requested him to join us in the panelist for this webinar. Now I would like to ask Kuldeep introduce if he can introduce himself, and let's start the webinar.
Thanks, Ankit. Really appreciate your wonderful introduction. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, all the people who have joined. We have been doing series of webinars, and we had very successful webinar some days ago, and we are doing this one, and then we'll have one more next week. So thanks for joining, everybody. We will make it very crisp and short, this webinar as we did in the last one. And I would request all of you to park your questions and ask as many questions as possible. You can text your questions, or you can also raise your hand, and Ankit can open your audio so that you can ask questions directly on live to me and Arun. So this is Kuldeep. I'm CEO of Saraca Solutions. I have around 18 years of experience working with the world's largest medical technology company in the world. I have worked almost everybody in top 10 except one company. A variety of experience into medical software, medical equipment, and I have started from days when IEC 62304 and cybersecurity were not really big concerns for device companies. Not many people paid enough attention, I would say 10, 15 years ago. But as we go along in the world where most of the devices are getting connected, we are more on our mobile apps and mobile phones, smartphones, and it's becoming wonderful these days to do things which we were not able to do earlier. With that, let's jump onto the presentation here. So as Ankit said, this will be more focusing on IEC 62304, but we will touch upon cybersecurity, which had been a concern these days on a variety of other products as well. But in case of medical software, it has becoming a good trend these days. So I'll just give you a brief how we are going to run this webinar. So as I said, we have made it very crisp. We have made it to the point, and we will talk about things which are more practical. We are not going too deep into the subjective understanding of this standard. And Arun, my co-panelist, will share his experience as we go along. What are the interpretation of the standard, and how our landscape has changed in last couple of years. So we'll talk about how software technology is enabling better care. That's the whole purpose in medical devices and in this field, that in whatever we do, we're looking for better patient outcomes and better care for them. We'll also talk about IoMT, which is Internet of Medical Things. What is the future of them and how they are expanding exponentially. People never thought that the expansion will be so fast, and it is a good thing. But at the same time, there are risks associated with it. And how do we take care of those risks so that we provide benefit to patient and caregivers, which were not there earlier? Because, medical and healthcare industry has always been said that they are slow mover as far as the adoption of technologies because of various reasons. But I think in last many years that trend is changing quite fast. We also talk about background. Why IEC 62304? Arun and I have worked with many customers around the world and as a team, and our customers always ask that we already have an ISO 13485. We have 14971 for risk analysis. We have robust SDLC for our software. Why another software? And our answer to them is that there is certain elements which are not covered in other standards, which are really captured in 62304, and it is not a burden to you. I mean, we have had intense discussion with customers and convincing them that 62304 helps you to make a product better, which is safe, which is effective, which done wonders for the patients. So we'll talk about that. We'll also talk about what was the need of a consolidated standard. We'll also talk about how this standard relates to other standards. I think the folks who are in this industry for long understand this puzzle really well, which standard fits where and their benefits. But folks who are entering into this arena for the first time, it is a challenging task for them. As you know, with MDR, a lot of consumer devices, which were not medical devices earlier, are moving to that space. That has making a mindset change, huge mindset change for these people who have traditionally not been doing risk analysis, who are not really exposed to do hazardous analysis, right? And they now, when they have to do this, it's a bit of a challenge for them, and training is required. We'll also talk about 62304 structure, what it has, and the software safety classifications. What are the classifications of different softwares? We'll also talk about key documents. It becomes very important in the nutshell that, okay, if I have to follow this standard, how many more documents I have to add in my quality management system, right? And typically, as you know, in software, there's a lot of documentation, because if you have a physical device, you can feel, you can see, but software you really cannot see. So if you have to understand a software, you have to have a document which talks about the software and you can understand about it. Arun will help me to go over risk management process, and we'll also have a recap, what we have learned in 1 hour session. So let's look at what is software technology doing wonders. It's doing wonders these days, right? So earlier, devices are physical product. So we go to a hospital. If I get sick, if I have to take SpO2, if I have to take ECG, I typically have to go to hospitals. These days, you can take ECG at your home with your mobile phone. You can take SpO2 with your mobile phone. In old age homes, there are remote patient monitoring devices which can take up to 38 to 40 vitals. We have, Arun and I worked on a device for a Singapore-based company. We helped them to adopt IEC 62304, and not only adopt, doing risk analysis for some of their wonderful products. That device does almost 38 different vitals. So it's changing the game. You don't have to have a nurse sitting next to a patient or a old age person to take care of 24/7. This device does most of the things. The devices are connected to patient physically. As I said, I can have a lot of devices, on my bedside, which I can take data. This data can transfer to the hospital, the back office, and you can have alarm there, right? If a vital goes beyond a threshold, you can have help come to your home immediately. Physical access is needed to view health data, right? So we have had a lot of files. If you go to a hospital, there are a lot of files which have to be there for each patient. Now you can see those data on your mobile, right? You have different apps to store your files. Data obtained from devices stored on paper or locally. right? It's a lot of paperwork, which now data is stored on cloud. I can access anywhere in the world. I can be in US and I can see data of a patient who is being treated in India at a hospital in New Delhi, which were not really possible days, earlier days. One of the fantastic devices which you're working on these days is where I can do an operation in a large hospital in, let's say, California, and if somebody wants to see that real surgery going on in Paris, I have capabilities to do that, and with clear picturization, I can the physician or a surgeon can provide tangible inputs, provide help to the surgeon who is doing surgery in California, sitting in Paris, which was not there earlier. And earlier it was mostly audio conversation, but now you can really see the quality of picture and the transfer is very fast. With that, we'll talk about in next slide a lot of trends, but by 2023, around 68% of medical device will be connected in hospitals at home. So if you look at this trend, 10 years ago, this percentage was very low. IoT future. So we have, all of us know Internet of Things and how it has changed the world, not only in medical devices or healthcare, and other type of devices as well. Like you take retail, you take transportation and other businesses. But how it is changing. So the good things, but at the same time, we also need to see what risks it brought to us and how good we are able to manage those risks. So there's a study done by Deloitte and HIPAA journal. So they say that 70% of medical device manufacturers say an attack on their medical device is likely. They're not sure that whether it will happen or not happen because of this not having enough confidence in their medical device or the channels where your medical device data pass through. Right? If you have a medical device sitting at home, you're taking a vital, let's say you're taking SpO2 reading, your SpO2 device captures the data, it goes to your mobile phone, from your mobile phone it goes to a cloud network, which could be managed by some third party, and from that cloud network it goes to your caregiver, and that could be another party which is managing that cloud, right? There could be two, three different clouds. So if you look at your, though it's a software is not visible, but if you think about a physical thing, let's say it's mobile, it's being passed on to 2-3 different parties. Now, what are they doing with this mobile phone? Is it same when it goes from one place to another place, right? There could be some issues on the way. Your data might change. There have been cases where data has changed, when it went from one place to another one. So that's why this number is very high. And then when you're exposing your data to external partners, there is always a chance of attack. There are people who want to grab data, hack your data for various reasons. The number 2 is 82% of healthcare organizations have experienced a cyber attack on their IoT devices. 82%, it's a very big number. It could be a medical device, it could be a device in hospital, but 82% have had some sort of cyber attack on their device. Let's say if something happens, whether your cyber attack is tangible or intangible, or it's real or whatever it may be, typically average cost is around $350,000 to take care of a cyber attack. And the last point is 49% device manufacturers said security is factored in during the design of the devices. This is a very interesting fact, 49%. But what about 51%? So 51% people have not factored security while they were designing their product. And this is very alarming that, when you're designing your product, that is the best time to factor cyber security risk, to factor other risks into your device so that when it comes out in the market, you have less challenges. Your customers are happy. Your sales will go up. But if you have a faulty device, you might have a good device, but later on, if you are not able to manage it really well, and if there are risks associated with it, your sales will fall. And we have seen this in the market. Now let's look at the background. So we talked about in two of these slides. We talked about where is world going these days. What is IOMT doing, and then let's talk about the background. What was the reason of another standard? Many customers who are pretty new to this medical software field, they ask, as I said in the beginning, why is new software? So what was there before? If this software, if this standard is not there, I'm sorry, what was there earlier? So previously there was no dedicated standard available for medical software. There were NC standards, there were AMI standards, there was 60601-1-4, some elements of software, medical software there, but there was not a dedicated software standard for medical devices. There was nothing special for embedded software and SOUP. We'll talk about SOUP in the subsequent slides. Now IEC 62304 is based on AMI SW68, which was the earlier standard used by some medical device manufacturers. What it does, it omits a lot of requirements. So there was a lot of mix and match between ISO 13485. So let's make it very clear. ISO 13485 does only management control on how do you make product in your company. ISO 14971 does risk analysis, right? But there was ISO 13485 and ISO 14971 does not talk about how you do software SDLC for your software, right? So this standard gives you a bare minimum requirements to do your software development and software testing. This is nothing related to management control, which is ISO 13485. There's nothing related to risk analysis of the whole system. We'll talk about it has elements to do risk analysis to find out the class of your software, but not as the whole product. So as we said, there was a need of a consolidated standard, which is dedicated only for medical software. And what it does, it helps you to make a safe medical device, which has risk management controls, which have been used or manufactured using good software practices. Critical thinking is required. Earlier folks say, oh, by the way, I'm doing software, for other industries, for banking, and I have all the checklists, and I use best practices. But medical industry said, no, that is not done. It is not the checklist. It is when I'm developing my product, from the stage one, when I'm doing architecture, it is required. Manufacturers knows more about their product than regulators. Very important point. Regulators comes and audit you once in a while, but you are the person who knows your product really well, and they're expecting you to have all the elements of judgment and best practices when you develop your product. There's a huge variety of medical devices, as we know. You have medical devices, you have syringes, you have pacemakers, which are class 3 medical devices, have a lot of cybersecurity attacks. We have seen in past and in recent past. We have defibrillators. We have remote patient monitoring devices, which can be used off the shelf. Right. So there's a huge variety. Now there has to be a standard which has a minimum requirement. It is not the full-fledged standard. It does not tell you everything, but it has bare minimum requirements, which helps you to start from somewhere and then build on top of that. This is a slide where we are helping you to understand how many of these standards relates to each other. So as we said, management standards are ISO 13485 and 14971. Doing quality management system as well as risk analysis. On the middle, you have regulatory requirements. So whichever market you are selling your product, if it is US, it's FDA. If it is Europe, it was MDD earlier. Now we have MDR and IVDR. If it is Australia, it's TGA. If it's India, it's CDSCO. each regulations, the regulatory bodies for each country. So you will have to follow those guidelines. And there are product standards. Some of these standards which are required for the whole product. So now what is 62304 doing here? 62304 is a process standard. It's not something that I have done the product. I have done the product and I'm getting it to test at a laboratory. You can do that, but that is not the whole intent. The intent is that you understand the requirement while you are developing the product. You catch things well in advance so that your cost of quality is very less. When it might take a little longer when it goes in the market, it does wonders as we expected. So with this slide, I would like to bring Arun in the conversation here. Arun, do you want to share your experience doing IEC 62304 based quality management system for many of your customers?
Yeah, hi. Yeah, sure, Kuldeep. Thanks for asking. I'll be happy to share those things. Yeah. So yeah, I've done we have worked to establish a quality management system in software med device companies. Actually, what happened, companies like small and mid-level companies, they develop softwares for bigger medical device industries, but they don't know about the regulations, about the regulatory requirements. So sometimes what happens, their clients or their customers come and they ask them to just take your own certification according to 13485 and 62304, IEC 62304. Then they think that yeah, we need, as we are a software company, we should take IEC 62304, but it's quite a bit challenging for us that we need to convince them, no, you have to comply with the ISO 13485 regulation, IEC 62304 regulation, as well as you need to comply with the ISO 14971 regulation as well, because your software is also taking risk to the medical device. So yeah, it's quite challenging to make them understand that what are the requirements tell and what is the 13485, why it is important for them, and 14971 how it's going to affect their device development process, their risk management process. So yes, it's quite a bit challenging, but yes, we have done.
Sure. Thanks, Arun. Thanks for sharing your experience. Let's go back to the presentation here. Thanks, Arun. So next, now let's jump on to the real task. What is there in the standard? Let's talk about what is there in the standard, right? So standard is divided into 9 different parts. Initial 4 parts are typical standard parts. Then the second one is software development process, different definitions. Part 5 is very important, software risk management process. Part 6 talks about software configuration management, which is very critical in software, that if you make any changes, how are you making sure that you have a configuration management system to capture the changes you have made in your software. Software problem resolution process. Obviously, when you launch the product, there will be issues, there will be complaints. People might have challenges to learn that software. So how you're adopting, what is your best practices to ensure that these problems are resolved. There's explanation of that as well. Part 8 talks about software maintenance. I think maintenance becomes very important. How are you capturing the complaints? How are you resolving them? And not only that, how are you releasing the next versions? I think software is a beautiful product where the enhancements are launched much faster. If it is electromechanical product or mechanical, electromechanical, takes a lot of time because you have to physically make that. When in software, it becomes easy. But at the same time, it provide you a challenge. How do you make sure that you have done whole 9 yards of ensuring that the change you have done Have you done risk analysis? Have you given it to change control board to make sure that everybody understand what changes you are making? Does this change give you new risk? Does it change your risk of the software? There's a lot of things which are typically required in doing the changes. And that's where I think IEC 62304 SDLC is different from other industries. Heavily regulated industries, aerospace, we have seen, there are good parameters, but other industries where changes are fast, but in case of medical, it takes time to ensure that whatever changes you are doing have real value. Let's talk about safety classification. And just, I'll make it clear, this safety classification or a classification is not a medical device classification. Your medical device classification is still done by the regulations. For example, if you are selling your product in US, it's class 1, class 2, class 3. If you are selling your product in Europe, it's class 1, class 2A, class 2B, and class 3. If you are selling your product in India, it's class A, B, C, and D. So that is different. That is a product level classification of medical device. This classification is for your software. And keep in mind, your software can be the full product. There might be a product which only has software, it does not have any physical piece, right? Your software could be embedded software, something which is there in your PCB board, your drives, your BSP drivers, and many times it's electromechanical. It's a system, for example, radiology machines, be it MRI, X-ray, CT scans. These are electromechanical devices which has software, electrical, mechanical, plastic, right? So this is not your medical device classification. This is just the software. And this is a very interesting change which was done, I think, in 2015 by the standard, that by default, your class is C. And you prove that step by step that if you have lesser risks, if you have lesser risk, your device can go to class A, but by default, you start with class C. I'll not go through this. I think this presentation will be shared on our YouTube channel. You can always go into detail. This snapshot is from the standard. But in general, your class A software is one which does not result in unacceptable risk. Right? If you're able to prove using your software failure mode effect analysis that your software does not result in unacceptable risk. And we have this debate many times with our customers. They say that, oh, my software is very simple. It doesn't do anything. My device, the device which is using is not really next to patient. And our question is that your classification of medical device is not based on your interpretation. It is based on your risk analysis. It is based on your indication for use. What is the purpose of your medical device? Where it is being used? If it is used in a process where caregivers, surgeons are making life decisions, which can change the life of a patient, or it can affect health, public health in general, your classification would be had. But let's not go to that discussion. We can have a separate webinar for that. Class B is a non-serious injury. So there is an injury, but it's non-serious. That will be class B. And class C is where death or serious injury is possible. Right. So this is a very high-level perspective to give you a quick gist of what is the classification. So, for example, class A example would be healthcare information management system, which is just carrying data from one place to another. Those could be class A. Class B could be devices, remote patient monitoring device, which is taking a human vitals from one place to another, and that is a data which is being read by caregivers, nurses, but not a major decision is being made until unless it is alarming. Class C examples could be the pacemakers, defibrillators, or any implant which goes into the body and which has a software chip inside it. Those could be examples of class C. Development of a robust medical software. I think this slide is very interesting. One of the reason Arun and I wanted to put this is to give you a holistic view of making your product to fight with cybersecurity, right? There are three elements when you're developing a product. Your product has to have state of art. It has to be unique. It has to be stand out in the market. That's very important for you to increase the sales and enter into the market. At the same time, if I am a caregiver, or if I am a surgeon or a physician, and I would like, or a patient, I would like to make sure that your product is safe and it has adequate performance. So these three things are very important, for any product in general, but the principle of medical devices are based on these three standards. Now, how do you make sure that these three parameters are captured when you are doing your software development? So, secured software architecture. How do you make sure that you take external threat posed by external circumstances, right? As I said in the beginning, if your data is transferring to 3 different clouds, are you talking to those cloud providers? Are you asking them that, can you show me evidence that you have considered risk associated with your cloud software, right? Are they able to convince you? If they are not able to convince you, perhaps you might have to change your choices. Robust risk assessment. Risk assessment for these days in connected devices is not only your device, which is very important at any given point of time, but at the same time, how are you assessing the risk of the channels where data of your medical device is passing through, or if your device is connected with somebody else's devices, or if you are taking some components from the third party in your medical device? How do you make sure that that third party has done enough risk analysis to make sure that the pieces in that software element in that product is safe and effective? Protected health information. How do you make sure that your sensitive information, we'll not talk about HIPAA and ICD-10 here, we can do a separate webinar for that, but in general, how are we ensuring that health information is really protected? Enhanced product safety. There may be certain regulatory requirements. Do you really have an alarm system? If something goes wrong, how do you really know? Many times, it's very difficult to capture the feedback of your device, right? Have you put enough intellect while you're developing a device so that if something goes wrong, how do you make sure? Have you made a provision in your quality management system that you are proactively going to the field to get the feedback, right? And where are you getting feedback? What questions are you asking? That really helps in understanding your design and development process. This slide talks about key documents. This is not a full laundry list, to be very open with you. We have captured very important documents. For example, when you're doing a software, medical software, you will have to have a regulatory plan, and which market are you going to enter. What are the specific standards in that market? Obviously, IEC 62304 is a voluntary standard, so that you're going to follow. But what is your holistic plan? Your software development plan, your design verification plan, traceability metrics. How do you ensure that this traceability metrics has been fairly new for many people who were not doing medical software in our experience. In design, user requirement, your software requirement specifications, your software architect document, your design document, your software detailed design. These are documents related to design. Testing, unit level testing, module level testing. How do you integrate? If it is software is built into different modules, and then how do you really integrate and make sure that each of these modules talk to each other coherently, right? Just ensure that there's a good marriage between these different modules. Your design verification validation report and testing at the system level. Let's say if you have electromechanical system, it has embedded software, it has firmware, it has application software, then it becomes a full test at the system level. Then maintenance, document and evaluate feedback. Do you have enough evidence that you are capturing feedback? Are you really evaluating the feedback? First, asking right questions. I think from Arun and I, our experience, we have found that many times we do not ask right questions. We're engineer or we're quality person, so we think like engineer or we think like a quality person, but we have to write questions which could be understood by caregivers, surgeons, physicians, and we have done wonders. We did a project for a large medical device company, one of the largest, and the questionnaire which we prepared, in assistance with the caregivers was a lot different than what they were really doing. And once your question is really robust and you are writing in a way that you really want to understand the feedback from the market, you will the report and outcome will be totally different. So you have elements where you have change, the request approval. How do you communicate to users and regulators? Those have to be captured in the key documents. Very quickly, we'll touch upon SOUP. I think this is a very critical element these days. As you know, there are open source platforms. There are a lot of communities on the web these days to share knowledge, to share experiences. People share their codes. But it becomes very important that if a friend of mine is working on something on open source and he shared a code with me, and I'm using that in my device, that is really not acceptable in medical devices. It does not really have a provenance where it has come from. How do you ensure that it does not have bugs? Have anybody done testing? So we need to ensure, we need to list if some whatever softwares we're taking from these sources, any off-the-shelf software which we are picking, we might think that this software piece has been there in the market from last 30 years, it's doing good. Can I take it? My answer is no, you just cannot take it. You have to ensure that this software is safe and effective. It may have done so good for 30 years, but you never know, it might do something wrong tomorrow. I cannot take risks, so you have to ensure that you provide the folks you're taking this off-the-shelf software provide you enough testing data to convince you. Any public domain software which is available, you have to ensure that it has all the elements and tested really well. Any legacy software, which were developed when standards were not that adequate. How do you do that? We have done a large project where a large medical device company had very little documentation because these products were there in the market for almost 40 years. They were doing good. This was cash-rich products, and now, if based on the new regulations in Europe, we had to redo the entire documentation. Keep in mind we had to redo all these documents, starting from URS, SRS, software architecture design, and it becomes difficult because the software is written by somebody else. How do you really understand? It may be a legacy language which has been not being active these days, but nevertheless, if you want to continue with that product, you will have to do. A risk management process. I think it's very critical for cybersecurity. How do you take cybersecurity risks into your SFMEA? Your software failure mode effect analysis. Does your risk table has enough elements? And we are having a lot of challenges with some customers, who are doing electromechanical product for the first time and medical software for the first time. To add elements related to software, it starts with something and ends with something. That window is becoming widening. it is not just that I am capturing risks related to my product, but how it is interfering with others. That risk also I need to take care. How it is transporting from one place to another, right? If I'm giving software, transferring my software online to my customers, how do you make sure that your software is transferring really well from one place to another? So with this, I'll brought in Arun one more time to seek your help, Arun, to share your experience doing a lot of DFMEA as FMEA for medical device customers, specifically for softwares.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Kuldeep. I will tell a best practice of to create a best risk analysis, best risk assessment report. So typically, what we have seen, actually, we have done FME updates. We have created FMEAs. So we have seen people created the FMEAs. Those FMEAs has a guess in the design features, processes. Sometimes they didn't list the critical processes in the FMEA. Sometimes they leave some processes. So what I recommend, like first you need to create your risk management plan, a proper risk management plan. Then just prepare a process flow chart. So process flow chart is very much a critical thing to create a exhaustive FMEA. So once you create a process flow chart for your product process life cycle, then you can list down all the processes of your product and list down the design features against the effect and cause what may cause with the specific design feature processes of your product. So by this process, you can list down all the design features and their effect and their code in the FMEA, so that you can create a exhaustive FMEA for your product. By this FMEA, you can create a good risk management report, which you can submit to the notified bodies. So also sometimes people create sometimes they have hazard analysis report in separate. So for that you just create a risk management file. So in that risk management file you can keep the risk management plan, FMEA, different types of FMEAs, like for software there is SFMEA, for UFMEA, for user FMEA, PFMEA, process FMEA, in case of design FMEA are there. So just put all the FMEAs with the risk management report or risk assessment report into one risk management file, so that it will be a good traceability to all your risk management documentation, which will be helpful to you during the audit and to show the notified bodies.
Thanks, Arun. I think thanks for explaining really well. Just one more question I wanted to ask. This new standard of 1497/2019. Do you want to just touch upon what are the major additions in this? Because many people would be interested to learn just a couple of few things. We might do a separate webinar. Just one or two things if you want to mention, because you just did a couple of FMEAs based on 1497/2019.
Yes, sure. Now this, according to this 14971/2019, they put a lot of scrutiny and they put a lot of emphasis on the residual risk. So nowadays you need to put your attention to the residual risk, to the first you need to mitigate your risk and the rest of the overall risk. Once you list down overall risk, then you need to see the different separate risks for your device, separate residual risk for device. After that, now you have to see the post-production, production, and the post-production activities. You need to check the risk. You need to do the risk assessment for the production and the post-production activities. For this process to to cater this production and post-production process, I told you that you need to prepare a proper process flow chart so that you can so that it will be easy for you to list down all your processes from production, post-production, your supply chain management, from design processes, from everywhere. The all processes you can list down in the FMEA. So that this will be helpful for you.
Thanks, Arun, for the wonderful explanation. Let's go back here. So that's sort of end of our webinar. This slide I put just to capture what we have learned in this webinar. So we talked about importance of cybersecurity, and the best place to start with cybersecurity is when you are conceptualizing your medical software from day one. You don't have to say that, let me just get to a critical mass, then I will think about security. That is not the right approach. You'll have to start thinking from day one. We are doing a large program for a large med device company, and one of the things they did, they did think about cybersecurity for almost 1.5 years in the project. It is a large project where almost 50 people are working, and later on, when they were about to have their beta launch, it became a huge challenge because they missed some of the critical aspect of cybersecurity, and by that their product launch was delayed almost for 4 months. So my recommendation is that start early, learn what is happening in the market, understand, accept the change. I think one of the major thing I am finding with people that they are not accepting the change. They are saying that, oh, cybersecurity is there, but not for me. I have the best product. But you have to prove on paper, right, that you have the best product, and you may have the best product, but still, is it? Have you taken all the cybersecurity elements into consideration? Think of risk while designing. Very important. I think you have to think about risk each time you do design and development. That thought process has to change. I think in early 2000, people were not really keen to think about risks while they were doing early designs. But I think right now it is very important that you have to start thinking risk from day one. We also talked about classification of medical devices, A, B, and C. We'll also talk about typical 62304 SDLC documents, different plans, testing plans, right, and why critical they are. We also talked about software development process. Arun has beautifully explained risk management, FMEA, RMF, and the new standard 1497 in 2019, which has brought in very good elements to ensure that your product is safe and effective. SOUP we'll talk about how this standard is related to other standards and what are the critical elements you are required in this standard, right? And we've also talked about very early in our presentation what are the trends in IoT devices. That's all. Thanks a lot. Over to you, Ankit.
Thank you, Kuldeep. That was really good. I think being not from software and those fields, it was really understanding for me as well the way you guys explained these things to us.
Mm-hmm.
So I would like to ask all attendees if they have questions, they can park their questions in the chat section, or they can raise their hand. I will unmute them and they can ask via audio as well. I will repeat it again. If attendees have questions, okay, someone has raised their hand. Yes, Suresh, you can ask your question.
Thanks, Kuldeep. It's a wonderful section. Okay. I have the couple of questions. Okay. It's been good learning to me today. Okay. Thanks for this section. You've been talking about like this 62304. In that, the process of like the 9 parts, which is inbuilt with that, you explained that. Okay. Even I'm expecting even the detailed one of actually like this 9 part. Specifically, I'm more interested in the part 5, which is the software development process. Okay. How this process is developed, it means like each and every will have like the subsection. Basically, if you talk about breakdowns, okay. So the part 5, how the process is there, and another one, the part 4 and part 5, how is the relation? Because part 4 is having a requirements. Part 5, you have a complete development. So that complete map, maybe you have explained that, but if you have like a picturized or something else, that will be helpful. That's my first question.
Sure.
And
sure.
I'll just complete my questions. Under the second question, you talk about like a soups. Okay. When you talk about the soups, I would like to really want to know what is exactly the difference between the OTS and soup. And some components you see when I'm using a software, some components as a OTS, some components only with the soups, some components as comply with the soups as well as OTS. Is it I'm okay to use, or which is still I have to verify with that, is it okay to use or not? So I would like to have that one, how I can identify is the right one, okay, I can use it. The another one like Arun was bring up with this, the 14971 FMEA. This FMEA, how much is related with my part 4 and part 9, which is the risk. The FMEA is has to be considered. That's what the picture is. I'm not missing in the part 5 first time, the detailed one. When I'm developing, I may not think all the risk. I want to develop my software from the process. Then the FMEA will have the correction to even to build the software in the better performance. So the 14971, how it helped in the part 9, which is the risk process, which you the problem resolution process, and as well as the risk process, which you mentioned, how is related with the part 5. So that's a one. And another one is that like the risk itself, like identify the potential risk, which you have mentioned that. Is it any material or any like a guidance how to identify? Because as a developer, I can't think about like this is a risk, means how I can take some reference in the identify. So this is what my question. Yeah, please.
Thanks, Suresh. Thanks for asking. Your first questions regarding relationship a little bit more deeper into software development process. I think my answer is if you go any SDLC or any best practices in the market about software development, IEC 62304 is not a whole lot different. That is one of the reasons we did not highlight that in a bigger way. The process, I think there are good best practices in the market. You will have to really follow them. But the real critical element is the risk thinking upfront. I think you're saying that let me develop a product and then I'll do SFMEA. I think my answer is no. Your SFMEA has to start almost the same day when you are conceptualizing your product. When you're doing SRS, when you're doing your user requirements, your risks table or your SFME has to start from that time itself. That is very critical element in IEC 62304. And your third question about OTC and SOUP, my answer is that you will have to get enough confidence from the supplier where you are taking your the full product or a piece of a product. And they have to give you certifications. Many times, the product is there in the market. They might have IEC 60601 testing, but do they really have IEC 62304? Or if they do not have, it is okay that they do not have IEC 62304 based SDLC, but have they really captured the risks associated with the product, and have they got some sort of documentation which are convincing to you? And the last question I would request Arun to answer, which was related to IEC 14971. Arun, can you answer that one?
sure. Yes, for ISO 14971, to create a FMEA, obviously you need to start the FMEA from the right first day of your software development process. Each and every process you are going to develop, you are going to adding on, then you need to write all those design feature and design processes in your FMEA. So that's why I recommended you that first you need to create a process flowchart. So in this process flowchart, you can write all your design feature and processes sequentially, so that all your processes can be listed in a sequential manner. So after the process flowchart has been completed, then you need to go sit together and put a brainstorming session, and you need to list all the effects and codes against those design feature and processes. So by this process, you can define all the effects and codes of the specific design feature and processes for FMEA. So after you get the effect and codes, then you can mitigate those causes by different validation and validation testing.
Thanks, Arun. Thank you. Ankit, are there more questions? Or did we lose
I
Ankit?
can't see. Guys, you can park your question in the chat section, or you can raise your hand. I will unmute you to ask your questions.
Okay.
We will wait for 4 more minutes, and then we can announce some more important announcements are there.
Sure. Okay, I think since we are going closer to the timing, do you want to just go ahead and talk about and wind up?
Yeah, so that was a really good webinar. People have asked questions as well, and for me that was really knowledgeable, that was really valuable. And here is a important announcement for you all attendees. We have one more webinar which is free, which is going to be held on 21st of August at 8:30 a.m. ET, and the topic for the webinar is how to conduct a detailed, compliant, and successful PMCF study. This topic has been requested from many attendees from our last webinars. So we have chosen this topic for the 21st webinar, which is going to be held on 8:30 a.m. ET. And thank you for all joining us on this live webinar, and thank you Kuldeep and Arun for being with us.
Thanks, Ankit. Thanks, Arun. And thanks, everyone, for joining. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.